Hi, my name is Jack McQueenie, and I'm the Executive Director of the Glen Eyrie Group. As you may have heard, the Waldo Canyon Fire has had a significant impact on the Colorado Springs community. As a part of that community, we wanted to give you a first-hand look of what that fire has done to the Glen Eyrie and Eagle Lake properties. On Saturday, June 23rd, a fire erupted in Waldo Canyon, less than 2 miles from both Eagle Lake and Glen Eyrie. We knew immediately this could be a problem for both of our properties. The forest was hot and dry. In the 10 minutes I drove along Rampart Range Road on the way to camp, this is how the fire grew. As the fire moved rapidly up the canyon, we knew we had to evacuate camp. We were glad it was a Saturday. No campers in session, and most of the counselors were in town on their day off. And all of our crew kids and their counselors were out rafting in Buena Vista. A skeleton crew remained at Eagle Lake. We worked quickly, but it seemed like there was so much to do in so little time. We watched as the fire chopper was aggressively dipping out of the lake and flying to the head of the quickly approaching fire. I was so grateful and proud of the way the staff were working as a team to take care of preparing the property for the approaching fire, especially how they thought forward about the needs of our crew campers, our full-time and summer staff. Mark Heffentrager and his team raced through camp. They thought to grab sleeping bags, medications, and a lot of other essential items people would need. This is what we were watching as we were grabbing staff essentials and beginning to load the frozen goods from our freezer into a truck. At that point, Mike McNamee radioed from the Glen explaining we were also beginning to evacuate our guests and staff at Glen Eyrie. We realized that we couldn't get into the Glen to store the food, so we put it all back in hopes that our power would stay on. As we were standing in front of the dining hall, a small plane came over us that was flying about 20 feet above the trees and laid a line of slurry alongside our entrance road to help protect Lynn Engel's home. It scared the spit right out of me. We began to string the horses to one of our climbing ropes in order to lead them off of our property. We looked over our shoulders to see this gruesome black fire cloud approaching. It was a fearful sight. We stopped and prayed, and within 5 to 10 minutes the smoke had dissipated. We kept working. Mark did a great job leading us to corral the horses. In the midst of this, Lynn Engel, who was traveling home, called our former horse camp director, Melanie Smith Bright, for help. She then recruited a number of friends, and even the sheriff's department to come up and trailer down all 22 horses in one caravan. By 9:30 that night, they were all gone. We then spent the next several hours stretching hoses and getting sprinklers around all the major buildings set up. We learned later that this was very helpful for the firefighters. While texting with Derek Strickler early Sunday morning, he suggested I head up to the cross to see where the fire was and what we might be dealing with. The sunrise was bright red, and the air was very still. As I looked down at Eagle Lake, I was grateful for all that God had done in this place. I was very aware that thousands of people were praying with me. We all were asking God that He would spare this place on behalf of the generations of people whose lives have been changed here. It wasn't long after that, as we began to move all the vehicles to the beach, that the wind picked up and the fire expanded. It was at this point I talked to Derek, and we made the decision to evacuate. Sean Gutierrez, Sean Tilden, and Sean McKelvey were a courageous band of men in our last hours there. This was the last picture taken driving out of camp. The final thing I prayed was the first one who would be responsible for the fire here would be someone who was walking with Jesus and who had a strong sense of stewardship, as we have had for this very special place. Monday morning, June 25th, a small contingency of us were able to get back on the Glen Eyrie property to get resources we needed to open up a temporary office at Focus on the Family. Every 30 seconds, a helicopter flew over with a bucket. It seems as though we were reliving the Eagle Lake experience. It was at that night's evening community meeting I met Rich Harvey, the Federal Incident Commander for the Waldo Canyon Fire. After the briefing, I asked him about the status of Eagle Lake and their approach to protecting our property. Rich pulled me aside and promised, "Our guys are not up there to wrap buildings and move on. They're there to fight this fire. We're drawing a line to take our stand there." He also promised to get us back up there within the next couple of days, depending on the intensity of the fire on Rampart Range Road. Rich also gave me the first update we had on camp. The fire had moved through camp, but the major buildings were fine. We were the first to be reported on the news that a structure had been lost. On Tuesday, we met as a leadership team and made the difficult decision that in light of the information we received from Rich, other authorities, and the counsel from Bob Foster Jr., we would no longer be able to offer camp at Eagle Lake this summer. It was later that day, right before we left to go up to Focus on the Family, to announce to our Glen Eyrie group leader community that we were canceling camp. This came across our TV. As we were driving north on I-25, this was a shot of the fierce firestorm at 4 o'clock from across town. It was that night that one of the TV channels reported that Glen Eyrie was on fire. This was also the horrific night where the Flying W Ranch, our nearest neighbor, and 346 homes in the Mountain Shadows area were destroyed. After that short night, I got up early to ride my bike over to Glen Eyrie to see the impact of the fire there. I held my breath, not knowing what to expect. The property was an eerie place in that no one was there, and a lot of animals were down on the grounds. Seeing the castle the way it was brought me to tears. I then rode up to the mouth of the canyon to see what kind of damage had been done there, when I came across this burning pine stump that had rolled down from the rim of the canyon. Derek showed up about then on his bike and joined me to put the thing out. Rich Harvey arranged for Lynn Engel and I to get up to Eagle Lake. We stood with hundreds of firefighters from all over the country during their morning briefing. After our safety briefing, we got dressed and were escorted up through the active fire area to camp. This picture represents the hard and hot fire that circled around the northwest side of camp. This is the entrance to Eagle Lake, where Lynn and I prayed that God would prepare us for what we were about to see. Between the two of us, we have almost 60 years of our lives invested in this place. With great grace, Lynn encouraged us by saying, "This sure opens up some great new views of Pikes Peak." This was unbelievable. Just through our camp gate, we came to the entrance sign where there appeared to be little fire damage. As we looked up towards girls' camp, we could see that there was minimal burn up there. Here's a cabin that has been wrapped by the firefighters to protect it. This is Mike Vasquez, my new favorite firefighter who is in charge of the fire crew at Eagle Lake. Mike told me of a story on how the fire came down this cross ridge and suddenly turned left. He said it made no earthly sense, but as he drove onto our property further and saw the Bible references and the cross from our beach, he then said it made perfect sense. It was at that point I knew Mike was the answer to the prayer I prayed on Sunday as I evacuated the property. You can see here by the Engelball field some of the work that the firefighters had done in backburning our property, saving it from the head of the fire that burned along the zip line rock hill on the northeast side of camp. This is a shot of what remains of the first structure that was burned in the Waldo Canyon Fire. our equestrian program's supply shed. Pictured here is what remains of our riflery range. As you can see on the hill above, the effects of the intense fire. This is what's left of one of the cabins in girls' camp. Hanley Kincaid and a group from our Alabama Navigator Collegiate Ministry had just completed wildfire mitigation on the upper end of girls' camp. Mike communicated to me that this work they had done was the one thing that probably saved all of girls' camp. This is a shot of one of the platform tent areas used by our excursion camps. We are very grateful that these cots were spared and are excited that a wire brush and spray paint will make them look just like new. This is a snapshot of our Eagle Lake map. The black line is the first containment line dug by the firefighters at camp. The light gray lines all around camp are miles of the same kind of containment line. Looking up from the office towards girls' camp, you wouldn't even think that a fire had moved through our property. We were really anxious to see our new staff housing building that was just completed last year. Seeing this building brought great emotion. As our daughter Caitlin said, each of our buildings is really a testimony of God's faithfulness and provision toward us. As we were driving around, we probably saw 30 to 40 pairs of firefighters mopping up areas that were still on fire or smoldering. One of the things I had a chance to share with many of them was that they are now part of the legacy that has impacted generations of families through the ministry here at Eagle Lake. Many of them commented on what a beautiful and special place this camp has been. As I looked up to the cross, I realized the entire ridge burned, but the cross was still there. Mike sent me a picture with a text 2 days later. Fire all around it, and it did not burn. Later he told us there isn't even a scorch mark on the cross. As I think back over the events of the last 2 weeks, one of the most powerful moments was when I heard the Lord whisper to me early Friday morning, "I am about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it?" From Isaiah 43:19. Isaiah 41:10. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. This ministry is about generations. Generations of faithful men and women who have carried what they've learned here out to their own sphere of influence. And it's not going to stop. Our staff are resolved to continue to provide the kind of life-changing experiences that happen at places like Glen Eyrie and Eagle Lake Camp.